Let's talk about a promise. A really big one, made on the world stage. It's a story about trading the most powerful weapons ever invented for a simple guarantee of security. And it's a story that gets right to the heart of this deep, fascinating tension between what's written on a piece of paper and what actually happens in the real world of power politics.
So picture this. It's the early 90s, the Soviet Union has just collapsed, and a newly independent Ukraine finds itself in an incredible and frankly powerful position. It had inherited a massive stockpile of nuclear weapons. Literally overnight, it became the third largest nuclear power on the entire planet. But then, Ukraine made this absolutely historic choice. It decided to voluntarily give up its entire arsenal. And what did it get in return? A set of security assurances from the world's great powers, all written down on a single document.
And that one piece of paper was the 1994 Budapest Memorandum. It's a document that would come to symbolize the hope of the post-Cold War era, and, as we'll see, its incredible fragility.
So here's a quick rundown of how it all played out. In December of '94, Ukraine officially joined the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. On that very same day, Russia, the UK, and the US all signed the memorandum committing to respect Ukraine's independence and its borders. And for 20 years, that promise held. But then came 2014, when one of the original signatories, Russia, did the unthinkable and violated those very core principles.
And this right here is the absolute heart of the matter. See, the Budapest Memorandum was what's called soft law. Think of it as a politically serious handshake, a promise, but it wasn't a legally binding treaty. If something went wrong, the agreement just called for consultations, not for any real legal action. It's the total opposite of hard law, like a treaty, which creates obligations you can actually enforce in a court. The failure of that promise, of that soft law, really forced a much bigger question onto the world stage. If even a political promise between great powers can be broken so easily, what about actual laws? Who is there to hold individuals accountable when they commit the worst crimes imaginable?
Well, the world's answer to that very question was to create a permanent court, an institution built to enforce hard law, not against countries, but against the actual individuals in charge, to make sure that the world's most terrible crimes don't just go unpunished. And that is the International Criminal Court, or the ICC. It was established by a treaty known as the Rome Statute, and it got up and running back in 2002. What makes it so different is that it's permanent. It's not a temporary court set up for one specific conflict. It has this one, single, incredibly powerful mission: to end impunity.
Okay, so how does this court of last resort actually work? Let's dive into the mechanics of it, its powers, and the core principles that guide it.
First off, the court's authority is super specific. It can't just prosecute any crime. Its jurisdiction is strictly limited to just 4 categories, what are often called the core crimes because they're seen as offenses against all of humanity. We're talking about genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression.
So how does a case even get started at the ICC? Well, there are basically 3 ways in. A member country can refer a situation, or the UN Security Council can do it. But then there's this third, really crucial path. The prosecutor can decide to launch an investigation all on their own. This power, known by its Latin name, proprio motu, is a huge deal because it gives the court a serious degree of independence from raw politics.
And this is the really revolutionary idea, written right into Article 27 of the court's founding document. It says the law applies to everyone, equally. It doesn't matter if you're a head of state, a prime minister, or a general. Your official position gives you zero immunity. This is a direct shot at that age-old idea that powerful people are somehow above the law.
But just like we saw with the Budapest Memorandum, there's often a massive gap between the words written on paper and the hard realities of global politics. And for the ICC, its greatest challenge is trying to enforce its legal rules in a world that's often run by power and pure national interest.
So today, you have 125 countries that are members of the Rome Statute. That means they have legally promised to cooperate with the court, to arrest people it wants, and to hand them over for trial. That's a huge chunk of the world, but it's not everyone.
And you know who isn't a member is just as important as who is. Some of the world's most powerful nations, the United States, Russia, China, India, Israel, have not signed on. And their absence, well, it fundamentally limits the court's reach and its ability to enforce its decisions. And the political pushback can be pretty intense. Get this, the United States passed a law back in 2002 that got nicknamed the Hague Invasion Act. It actually authorizes the president to use all means necessary, including military force, to free any American citizen if they're ever detained by the court. And this just highlights the ICC's biggest weakness. It has no police force. It is 100% dependent on countries cooperating to actually make arrests.
And as you can imagine, this dependency has led to a really mixed record. I mean, there have been real successes, like the conviction of the Ugandan warlord Dominic Ongwen, but there are many others, like the former president of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir, who's been at large for years despite a warrant. Some, like Muammar Gaddafi, died before they ever saw a courtroom. And others still, like Laurent Gbagbo from Ivory Coast, were eventually acquitted.
But here's the thing. Despite all these massive challenges, the court has not been shying away. Not at all. In fact, right now, it is wading right into some of the most politically explosive conflicts on the entire planet, which is really putting the whole idea of international justice on trial.
Just look at the headlines. The ICC prosecutor has gone after arrest warrants that have sent absolute shockwaves across the globe. We're talking warrants for Russian President Vladimir Putin for alleged war crimes in Ukraine, for the leaders of Hamas for their role in the October 7th attacks, and for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza.
And so all of this brings us right back to where we started, with the tough lessons from that broken promise in Budapest, and with this fundamental question about the rules that are supposed to govern our world. From the soft law promise made to Ukraine that just couldn't be enforced, to the hard law of the International Criminal Court that's now facing this incredible political resistance, we're left with a profound and, frankly, pretty uncomfortable dilemma. The idea of global justice is powerful, for sure, but its true test isn't in the fancy words of a treaty, but in the willingness of nations to actually stand by them. The real question isn't just whether we can write the rules, but whether we can ever truly make them apply to everyone,